Minute 10 first. Chica was the first, and has seen everything, at least according to Ultimate Custom Night, since one of Withered Chica's voice lines quite literally says, "I was the first, I have seen everything."
I was the first, I have seen everything.
Which does mostly suggest that Chica was the first victim in the series. However, it may also suggest that she was the first of the missing children, with another potential victim before her. This is really the question that we need to ask. Was Chica's line about being the first victim ever, or about being the first of the missing children? Because while yes, it's a spirit, it's still the spirit of a child who would exaggerate the phrase seeing everything, especially when William would most likely have developed his MO after his first kill, his MO being the whole dressing up like Spring Bonnie thing. And coming up with an excuse to lure a kid away would require more confidence than someone who hasn't killed anybody would normally have, at least with normal serial killers. So could we have been right all along that Charlotte was the first victim? And if that's true, does that point towards William's original motivation? And at 9, the Bite of 87. The Bite of 87 is a still long-held debate in the FNAF community. At first, some thought that Freddy had caused it due to the handprint on his head. Then we suspected Mangle, and then Fredbear. However, one contender we never expected was Chica. This is a fairly dismissed theory, but there is a line from Toy Chica in Ultimate Custom Night that states, "Where's my beak? Lodged in your forehead, of course."
Where's my beak? Lodged in your forehead, of course.
It's important to note here that the Bite of 87 involves the character losing the frontal lobe of their brain to an animatronic bite. With the frontal lobe being at the forehead, this seems to indicate that perhaps Toy Chica is the one who caused said bite, especially when we know that FNAF 2 takes place in 1987 and there is no mention of a bite. This is also a reason why we thought that the culprit could be Mangle. There's also the issue of the hint that Scott gave MatPat and other theorists during one of MatPat's live streams. Why would Toy Chica be missing her beak? And maybe Scott answered that in this game, as he's known to do. And at 8, hot chicken sandwich. Now I make quite a few jokes about the amount of unsafe for Virgin Mobile users Chica fan art there is, but was that intentional by Scott? I know this sounds crazy, but what was the point of making Chica thicker than Kim K eating a bowl of oatmeal in the second game? I mean, the game got so popular it warranted a sequel within 87 days, so why not reuse the same model instead of making one that would add to the increasingly hormonal fan art of the characters? What if it was to promote the game more? I mean, in a way, not safe for work fan art is a form of advertising, with these character drawings being shared across plenty of subreddits rather than just one specific to FNAF, and all over Imager with more tags like furry and whatnot. So could the slim thickening of Chica be an intentional game choice by Scott to get more foul fouls into the series? Like what I did there? I have no idea, but I mean the latest game was called Fury's Rage, and Scott even felt the need to point out that it was not Furry's Rage, plus the slim version of Chica has become the more used one, with Funtime and Glamrock Chica both using that same silhouette, so who knows? I think we all do.
Let's go somewhere more private.
Number 7, Mrs. Afton's soul. So one of the prominent theories when it comes to Ballora is that she is the wife of Mrs. Afton, in spirit form at least. Some believe that Mrs. Afton died. A lot of people actually believe that this happened as the result of a car crash due to a popular FNAF music video that circulated and somehow became considered canon by fans, despite the fact that this has yet to be confirmed in-game or in any of the books. Regardless, many fans have theorized that following her death, Mrs. Afton's soul lingered on this earthly plane within Ballora, and that Ballora is, in essence, possessed by Mrs. Afton. The song Ballora sings in Sister Location has often been used as evidence to support these claims, although there are a few different explanations for those lyrics.
And at 6, Fruity Maze. Fruity Maze is where we got the idea that the dead dog was what lured Chica away to her ultimate death, since in the Fruity Maze minigame we can see flashes of a girl playing the arcade game whenever we are playtesting it. However, as the maze levels continued, they also get more gruesome, showing dead dogs instead of fruit, and eventually having you trail bloody footprints behind you, which is horrible, but as the images get worse, so does the reflection, eventually showing the blonde girl crying with Spring Bonnie standing behind her. Once you complete the final level, we hear the horn of a car as text appears on screen, saying, "He's not really dead, he's over here, follow me," which is ultimately William luring us to our fate. Time ended. At least we get to see our dog again. There's actually another theory that Afton uses the dog to possess Mangle, and that's why Mangle's moving in FNAF 2 minigames, but also it was his first experiments with Remnant, but that's not a Chica theory, so I'll leave it at that for now. Halfway through in at number 5, Shadow Bonnie. Shadow Bonnie has been in the game since FNAF 2, and has even been one of the most recurring characters, making his way all the way into FNAF AR. But who is this mysterious pitch black rabbit animatronic? The most popular theory is that they are some form of springlock victim that wasn't able to possess the suit for one reason or another, so instead their agony manifests into a pitch black cloud of pain shaped to look like the thing that killed them. And that's pretty haunting in and of itself. But what the heck is going on with the fact that it looks like Toy Bonnie? Toy Bonnie isn't a springlock suit, it's just a pure animatronic, so why would the agony manifest into looking like a non-springlock suit if they were killed by a springlock version? Why not possess the golden Bonnie suit so William couldn't end up using it? And why does looking at this animatronic for too long cause your game to crash? There are only 3 animatronics that I know of that cause this, and 2 out of the 3 of them are both variations of Freddy. Golden Freddy and Nightmare, so what gives? And at 4, Shadow Chica. One question a few people have had since FNAF 2 is, where is Shadow Chica? Why doesn't Chica have a shadow animatronic? Some consider this proof that these shadowy figures are works of the springlock versions of Freddy and Bonnie, since it's in essence the only thing that these two characters have in common, and it would explain why there's no Chica variant of the Shadows. But it doesn't explain Shadow Dee from Ultimate Custom Night. I mean, I guess it's possible that the shadow animatronics are springlock victims or spirits kicked out of the various suits, but where could a possible Shadow Chica be? What if Shadow Chica is actually contained in the cupcake? Chica's cupcake has been confirmed to be an entirely separate animatronic, at least until Illumix comes out saying those fast facts aren't canon. But until that point, the reason for no Shadow Chica could just be that it had somewhere to go. Bonnie and Freddy don't have another animatronic, only a guitar and a microphone, and that wouldn't be enough for the spirit of a springlocking victim or even one of Afton's victims. So could the fan named Carl the Cupcake be the secret Shadow Chica that we've been looking for?
Number 3, an empty room, an empty tomb. What if Ballora was intended to be an animatronic to hold Mrs. Afton's soul, but instead was unable to fill that role before Mrs. Afton left or died prematurely? We still don't really know why William Afton creates animatronics and seemingly is obsessed with the mad science of bonding souls to them. Most believe that this obsession comes from a place of William wanting to discover the secrets of immortality. If he loved his wife, if he even had a wife to begin with, or a true love, is it possible that Ballora was made for her? This comes from the theory that Circus Baby may have been made for Elizabeth in a similar way, but where he succeeded with Elizabeth, perhaps he failed with Ballora, so she is an empty vessel. Perhaps the lyrics in her song refer to her own self. An empty room, no more joy, an empty tomb. What if Ballora is the empty room? What if the tomb is empty because the body ended up elsewhere due to some kind of failed bonding process?
Penultimately, in at number 2, Funtime Chica. The existence of Funtime Chica was something many poultry enthusiasts were excited for during the lead up to Sister Location's release. However, much to the dismay of some very not safe for work Reddit pages, there was no Funtime Chica. Where was she? Well, thanks to some code searching on the Scott Games website, we found our answer. Funtime Chica was simply rented out. To where? A new and unheard of location called Chica's Party World. This was easy to work out using maintenance logs and a slightly abbreviated form of this new restaurant. Whether it was new or had just been acquired, that explains where Funtime Chica was. And it was just a theory until Ultimate Custom Night came out that gave us a real canon version of Funtime Chica. But I have to be honest, the fan-made version without the beak was cooler in my opinion. However, that whole game does take place in Afton's brain while he's in a coma, so maybe it's not a real animatronic. Finally, in at number 1, Susie. This is again all but confirmed at this point, basically being considered canon by basically everyone. However, it's still just a theory, at least until Scott confirms it. So let's humor ourselves, shall we? Who is the one possessing Chica? Most assume it to be a young blonde girl named Susie, thanks to FNAF 3 and FNAF 6 as well as the Fruity Maze minigame. FNAF 3's ending features the heads of the original 4 or 5 animatronics, depending on what ending you get, laying on the ground with lights either on or off in their heads, again depending on what ending you get. However, the place placement of the heads is something to take note of, since the FNAF 6 Lorekeeper ending features the gravestone picture that also has a similar placement to the heads, with one remaining mysterious and away from the others, that is representing Golden Freddy behind the grass, and Cassidy, the whole shebang. The other graves go as follows: Gabriel, Fritz, Susie, and Jeremy, and the animatronic heads go Freddy, Foxy, Chica, Bonnie. And since the girl name and the girl animatronic are in the same place, we feel like it's pretty solid. Plus Susie in the books is described as blonde, and the blonde girl in Fruity Maze is like the only other blonde girl we see aside from Elizabeth, but she's in Baby and we already know that. Boom! And at 10, focus. The game may be called Five Nights at Freddy's, but in reality, is the game about Bonnie? Now this comes from the fact that Scott, while playtesting the game, was actually most scared of Bonnie, since he ended up having nightmares about the character. I mean, this is no secret. Freddy was also originally not going to move from the center stage, only scaring the player if they ran out of power. So the only animatronics you'd really have to deal with would have been Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Golden Freddy. And every character other than Bonnie has some form of area or mechanic that makes them invisible, at least for a time. Chica can go into the kitchen, Foxy doesn't come out unless you forget to check on him, and Golden Freddy is a rare occurrence, and that only really happens towards the other nights. So the only real consistency is Bonnie. And if Scott considered Bonnie the scariest animatronic and wanted the game to be scary, it would make sense if Bonnie ended up becoming the main focus. And at 9, Freddy lookalike. There are some FNAF community members who have seemed to think that Bonnie looks awfully similar to Freddy, and it's something I picked up on as well during my analysis of the FNAF 3 bad ending, link to that up in the top right corner. Their facial structure is relatively similar, especially when compared to Chica or Foxy, so why could this be? Well, it comes from FNAF 2. The withered animatronics are meant to be the original ones, however, Bonnie is missing their face. It's believed that when FNAF 2 ends and the toy animatronics are scrapped, that they repair the originals, which is true. But since Bonnie is missing his face, they use a Freddy face as a form of template to recreate the original Bonnie. So that's why Bonnie may have some features that looks the same or has an essence of Freddy. I mean, it could absolutely be what happened, given that the toy version of Bonnie is so different from the original, but I mean, it's probably just similar because it's a video game model, or because, they were made by the same guy. That would also make a lot of sense. And at 8, Funtime Bonnie. When Sister Location came along and the Funtime animatronics were introduced, we had a lot to say about some of our missing lineup. The main one being Chica. But while there was no Funtime Bonnie per se, we did get a hand puppet version of Bonnie called Bon Don. But who are we kidding? That's not good enough. But luckily the source code of Scott's website, scottgames.com, came in clutch and provided us with a potential explanation as to where our furry little wouldn't be furry in this context friend had gone. He was rented out. In the source code, theorists found the phrase Chica's Party World in a slightly abbreviated form, which led us to the conclusion that Funtime Chica had been rented out to her own themed restaurant called Chica's Party World, and this caused us to draw similar conclusions for Bonnie, perhaps not being rented out to a specific restaurant or location, but possibly for a birthday or some other event. While we didn't see them mentioned, it's still nice to think that Bonnie was still alive. That or William just didn't have enough combined remnant metal to make another animatronic. And at 7, Dogbait. It was already a mystery as to how Afton managed to lure these kids away from their parents, even if it was with characters they trusted. It's a wonder why they didn't call out stranger danger or something similar. But thanks to Chica, and more importantly her high school years, we were able to get an answer. Afton manipulated the kids through their grief. For Chica, it was her dead dog, which we see multiple times, but get a solid answer for an ultimate custom night during the intermissions for Toy Chica, the high school years, which sounds like a video someone put on the orange YouTube, but after ensuring that we all knew Chica was 18 at the time. Oh god, hopefully that's not an actual video. No matter, after Chica said that she would say that someone ran over Twisted Wolf's dog in front of her house, I think we all figured it out. We had ideas beforehand, but this just set it in stone. But this also begs the question, if Twisted Wolf's dog was hit, was it a family member or a domesticated descendant of his own species? Because either way, that's weird. And at 6, Chocolate Bonnie. Chocolate Bonnie is certainly one of the more interesting animatronics added by the AR game Special Delivery. It's funny, because I made a whole list about animatronics that would taste good and this was just a gimme. But why is this a thing? Like, sure, it was for Valentine's Day or Easter or whatever, but like, what is the in-universe reason for these animatronics? Like, Chocolate Bonnie literally has a whole chunk taken out of him and has candy buttons and sprinkles like those cosmic brownies. Like, what compelled the Fazbear Entertainment Company? in universe to create an animatronic out of chocolate. Like, even the endoskeleton is chocolate. I feel like this was like a joke pitch from someone that like they gave at a meeting to try to illustrate how ridiculous they would go, and someone took it seriously. Like when I jokingly suggested top 10 scary old town roads and they actually made it on Most Amazing Top 10. I think that was me. I know I made some ridiculous suggestion that I thought that they would take as a joke and then they actually made it. And that's like the most ridiculous video that I can think of off the top of my head. So I feel like that was me. I feel like that's it. But it's been so long that I've forgotten. I feel like Liam was like, oh yeah, the Lil Nas X. And I was like, top 10 scary old town roads. And he's like, yes. I said, no.
Number 5. Replacement Mrs. Afton. Another theory suggests that Ballora was simply made to fill in for Mrs. Afton, filling the void in William Afton's life after his wife left him. This also seems to be supported by the lyrics to Ballora's song, which seem to be quite sad and lonely in nature overall. Ballora mostly talks about being alone, implying that someone refuses to acknowledge her presence, which makes her lonely. However, the final lyrics in the song suggest that Ballora finds joy in her performance. She sings, "It's so good to sing all day, to dance, to spin, to fly away." This could even imply if Ballora was meant to be a stand-in for Mrs. Afton, programmed to be similar to her, that Mrs. Afton found joy elsewhere in her life. And so, with William making her sad, she chose to, as the lyrics say, fly away. Perhaps Mrs. Afton left William, which is why he created Ballora. He was sad about her leaving, and so Ballora is meant to be some kind of creepy replacement?
In it for Nightmare Bonnie. The Nightmare animatronics are the center of quite a few theories, thanks to the confusion FNAF 4 caused in the community. However, while we could discuss why the animatronics have stomach mouths or why they're all torn up, since the stomach mouths are most likely because of Elizabeth getting scooped and being torn just makes them look scarier, I wanted to ask why Nightmare Bonnie looks the most tame out of all the Nightmare animatronics. Like, seriously, when I look at them, I find Bonnie to be the least scary. The others have at least one thing that really sets them apart usually, especially Nightmare, but Nightmare Bonnie seems the most generic, and I have a theory as to why. When talking about Bonnie, it's impossible not to mention how he gave Scott nightmares while testing the first game, like I said earlier. In a way, this version of Bonnie is how Scott always saw him, but I believe in an effort to make the Nightmare Bonnie less horrifying for him, he made the most basic Nightmare animatronic that he could, so he could still play test the game without having nightmares again. Or because he made Nightmare Bonnie first and then added stuff to the other ones to make them more unique, or make them different, aside from the fact that they're all different animatronics. You get what I mean. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, puppet stuffing. We as theorists have been running with the idea that William stuffed the bodies into the suits for 7 years. That in order to hide the bodies, William put them in the animatronics, and somehow the cops were too incompetent or were being paid off not to check them. But what if we were wrong? What if someone else had stuffed the animatronics? What if it was the puppet? I mean, this isn't a new idea. Map had suggested it when talking about FNAF 2 oh so long ago. In the Give Gifts Give Life minigame, we see the puppet giving presents to dead kids because it thinks they're sad. But when that doesn't work to liven their spirits, see what I did there? Instead, it gives them life. Only at this point do we see the animatronic heads of Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, and Chica. And what about Golden Freddy, you ask? Well, he's there, but he only appears for a few frames after you put the final head on and gets quickly covered up by the Golden Freddy jump scare. So there we go. Does that settle it? Well, we can't say for certain. Since this is only 8-bit, we could assume that they're only displayed as dead kids because Scott wants the audience to understand that, and it also doesn't make sense that the puppet would hide the Bonnies, basically giving William an out, especially being the daughter of Henry and highly intelligent, at least for an animatronic possessed by a dead kid. But ultimately, in at number 2, more shadows. Now, I've discussed Shadow Bonnie earlier on this list, giving ideas as to how he ended up being created, but there's actually a theory that there are 2 Shadow Bonnies. The ones we see in the games, like FNAF AR and FNAF 2, but also the ones we see in the mini-games of FNAF 3, since the one in the mini-games appears to be more like the Yellow Spring Bonnie suit that we can also see in those mini-games. Whereas the previous Shadow Bonnie is very much based on Toy Bonnie, which only goes to further add to the whole Springlock victim theory, since FNAF 3, where this minigame version appears, is heavily focused on Springtrap and the spring locking that caused him to become Springtrap in the first place. Then again, this theory wasn't really prominent until the release of FNAF 3, when we learned of an unfortunate incident at the sister location involving multiple and simultaneous Springlock failures, so yeah. But it's still a theory. A Shadow Animatronics theory! Thanks for watching! But don't leave, I still have number 1. Finally, in at number 1, Jeremy. This is all but confirmed at this point, being considered canon by many, and by many I mean basically everyone. However, it's still technically a theory until Scott actually 100% confirms it. So, who is the one possessing Bonnie? Most assume it to be a kid named Jeremy. Why, you ask? Well, thanks to FNAF 3 and FNAF 6. FNAF 3's endings feature the heads of the original 4 or 5 animatronics, laying on the ground with lights either on or off. I mean, like, those are really the only 2 options. However, the placement of the heads is something to take note of, since in the FNAF 6 Lorekeeper ending featuring the gravestone picture, it also has a similar placement to the heads, with one remaining mysterious and away from the others, this one being Cassidy's grave behind the grass, relating to Golden Freddy's head in the back of the FNAF 3 bad ending. The other graves go as follows: Gabriel, Fritz, Susie, and Jeremy, and the animatronic heads go Freddy, Foxy, Chica, and Bonnie, which kind of annoys me, since the most common way I've heard the animatronics listed off is Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, Chica. I mean, like, it's just like a slight OCD moment, because it just sounds right, you know? Like, it's long, then short, then long, then short, and then the B and C's are in proper order, but the F's are more abundant, and that's why they're at the front. Okay, I'll stop talking now.
Number 10. Late Edition. Ballora is thought of by some to be a late addition to the game's sister location, a character who was never really intended to appear and was possibly rushed at the last second in order to be finished in time for the game's release. This is scary in the sense that if this theory is true, we almost got a game without any Ballora, which would be awful considering how important some consider her to be relative to lore and how popular she is among fans for multiple reasons. Why do people think that Ballora was a late addition to the game? Well, because she has no making of available in the extras. This is odd and stands out to people as, other than Ennard, Ballora is really the only other main animatronic to not have one included. Number 9. Good animatronic. This one admittedly is not that scary, but the antithesis to it is. What if Ballora was never intending to hurt you in the games and you were simply made to think that way? Sure, she can still jump scare you, but it could be because she has been herself manipulated by Circus Baby into thinking that you are a threat. After all, Ballora doesn't really seem to be malicious in nature. She genuinely likes to sing and dance and may not even have a vengeful spirit possessing her. Is it possible that she inherently would not think to do harm to you? Is it possible that she too is being manipulated by Circus Baby into thinking that you are the enemy, just as you think she is a threat? And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are a big fan of Ballora, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. The Last Animatronic. Some believe that because Ballora doesn't have a making of feature in the extras menu of sister location, that this gives up some information as to not just when she was made and added into the game, but when she was made in canon. Some have taken this as a hint that Ballora was one of the latest inventions of William Afton, in comparison, at least, to the other FNAF Funtime / sister location animatronics. Some believe that Ballora was the last animatronic in this grouping to have been made, which, if you believe that she has any connection to Mrs. Afton, might actually make some sense, assuming that you feel that Mrs. Afton disappeared following the death of Elizabeth for one reason or another.
And it's 7. Glamrock Bonnie. While we did originally wonder where Funtime Bonnie had gone, now we are left asking where Glamrock Bonnie is. With all the trailers for Security Breach, the only version of Bonnie that we've seen is one that has their face plastered in a bowling alley. Other than that, we see no sign of not only a Glamrock Bonnie, but really any Bonnie animatronic in the newest Fazbear game. Like, what? Why? How can there be no Bonnie? Are they trying to cut back on the scare factor so they cut out the one who Scott thought was the scariest, or are they trying to cut back on the ships? Because I'd understand that. I mean, like I already mentioned in a previous video how Roxy is basically a hybrid of Foxy and Bonnie, so I mean, like, if you're trying to cut back on the ships, that's not helping. Also, where's Foxy? I guess it's probably for merchandise reasons, because let's be honest, even I wouldn't want a full wall of Funko Pops that are just the same animatronics but in different forms. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, it would be cool to have some of my favorites like Grim Foxy or Dreadbear, but if it's just Foxy, Bonnie, Chica, and Freddy over and over, it would get a little boring. So I get why they're introducing more characters. Gotta get that Cash Monet. Why do you think we talk about FNAF so much?
Number 6. Not big on pretend. Circus Baby at one point in the game remarks how Ballora never learned how to pretend. Some believe this is an indicator towards Ballora's personality, and have even implied that Ballora does not like to play pretend because she is too mature and more grown up than Circus Baby in terms of her personality. Others have theorized that Ballora is simply not a fan of playing pretend, and for this reason did not like Circus Baby's plan, sensing early on that it might be flawed. It also makes sense that Circus Baby would be inclined inclined to pretend though, considering that she seems to have kinda two sides to her, and also the fact that it's heavily implied that she can shapeshift to a certain degree, disguising her appearance. Depending of course on which continuity we're looking at, as to how much she can shapeshift.
Halfway through into number 5, high school years. Do the high school years for Toy Chica actually represent the original missing children along with Charlotte? That's a good question. The series of intermissions revolves around Toy Chica and her desire to be with many boys in her school, including Freddy, Toy Bonnie, Pig Patch, Twisted Foxy, the Puppet, and Funtime Foxy, not in that order. While these aren't the original 5 animatronics, there are certainly some considerations to make here. Freddy, Toy Bonnie, Funtime Foxy, and the Puppet are fairly obvious. They each represent at least a version of their animatronic, whereas Twisted Fox and Pig Patch can be harder to place. The Twisted Fox is actually kind of simple, with them being the outlier and the most deceptive, like Golden Freddy, which would leave Pig Patch to be Chica's representation, since after all, she is the protagonist, and pigs and chickens are both farm animals. But this could also just be a symbol of how Chica was the first victim, and has seen even the puppet get killed, cause you know, she has body parts in her bag of all the people she's loved. Since I'm sure Scott knew that that would be a confusing line, perhaps this is his way of clearing it up.
Number 4. Loss. As I said, the meaning behind the lyrics to Ballora's song have been a topic of heated debate amongst fans, and the idea that these lyrics refer to Mrs. Afton speaking out with her own voice from within Ballora, or simply repeating Mrs. Afton's own thoughts as a sort of animatronic version of her, are not the only theories to explain them. Some have also speculated that the lyrics could refer to the loss of a child, and whether or not Ballora is Mrs. Afton could be a reference to Mrs. Afton's and perhaps even Mr. Afton's grief. All I see is an empty room, no more joy, an empty tomb could specifically be a lyric referring to the death of either Elizabeth or that of Crying Child, or perhaps both.
Getting close to the end in number 3, Twisted Bonnie. The twisted animatronics are something we have yet to see in game, and that's probably going to stay that way, as a way to differentiate the books from the games, at least in a sense, other than them being books and games. However, what if this isn't the case and we've already seen the twisted animatronics? It's entirely possible. The whole concept that the twisted animatronics run off is that they twist reality. They twist what you see using discs that emit high frequency sounds, so you see what you'd like to see rather than what they actually look like, sort of an eye of the beholder thing, or they just have a fixed thing of what you see other than their actual appearance. Either way, we've seen something similar or potentially similar in Sister Location, located on Funtime Freddy's chest. The game calls this his power module, but if it powers the whole animatronic, why is it so easily removable and not plugged into anything? This led fans to conclude that this was our first look at these sound illusion discs, and that the Funtimes may be using them to conceal their real form, the twisted animatronics. It would make sense given that their endoskeletons are made of remnant of all 5 of the original victims, the missing children from the missing children's incident, and if that's the case, where is Twisted Bonnie? If there is no Funtime Bonnie, is it someone else? Someone like Ballora or Baby? Or is there an animatronic that we missed that is still out for our blood?
Number 2. Mrs. Afton's Agony. On the other hand, maybe Ballora isn't so empty. After all, my previous point was just based on one of many different interpretations of Ballora's song lyrics. Something else you may have noticed about Ballora is just how aware of her surroundings she seems. True, she can't see because her eyes are closed, but she can hear and seemingly feel things. Maybe not physical things. I'm not saying that she has the sense of touch, but she can feel emotions. Circus Baby refers to her as being afraid in the game, and also comments, as I said before, that Ballora never learned how to pretend. Probably either because she didn't want to, or because she found it too difficult. Either way, pretty much everything here makes her sound fairly human. In the Fazbear Frights books, we learn that Agony is powerful. So powerful, in fact, that you don't even need a soul to give animatronic sentience if you have enough of it. Enough agony. Perhaps it was Mrs. Afton's grief and agony over the loss of her marriage or her children that then possessed Ballora. If that is true, Ballora could exist and have sentience, while Mrs. Afton could still be alive and out there still somewhere. Number 1. Purple Gal. Perhaps Ballora isn't Mrs. Afton, but even if she isn't, she could still be a companion for William. After all, something that many people have noticed is, well, how purple she is. She has purple eyes, purple hair, and a complete purple design, head to toe purple. Do you know who else is known for the color purple in the franchise? Like a lot of purple? Yep, William Afton himself, Purple Guy as we sometimes call him. So what if Ballora wasn't actually Mrs. Afton in the sense of representing his wife or being his wife incarnate, but instead was simply a creation of William's to act as his own companion? Colors are generally used in cinema and in storytelling to help connect concepts, characters, and denote themes. In this case, the connection could simply mean that these two are connected as creator and animatronic, or companions in some other way. We all know how much colors tend to be pointed out and utilized in both the FNAF books and in the games, and if any of William's children are actually animatronics in disguise, like we've been theorizing on the channel, it's possible that Ballora is still, in a way, their mother. She was just never human to begin with.
And at number 10, Dead. Until the release of the 5th Fazbear Frights book Bunny Call, most people understandably believed that William Afton died during the spring locking we see in FNAF 3, and that Springtrap was his possessed animatronic. While I heavily debated this, a load of people got mad at me for it, since I kept saying that Springtrap wasn't an animatronic, that he was William piloting a suit. But a load of comments every time I said that all flipped on me because Springtrap wasn't there and he's dead in the suit. No, he wasn't. I stood by that, and it was revealed to be the case in the Man in Room 1280. You best believe I was celebrating when I heard about that. Oh, it felt so good to be right. I saw that, I just started dancing. I was living my life, bro. It was great. Look, I've suggested a few outlandish things, but this was the first thing I was very adamant about, and I was right. Springtrap wasn't an animatronic because William was alive piloting the suit. I remember one comment said, "Oh, so you expect him to be alive in a room without food or water for 30 years? And I remember responding to that, saying that like there could be stuff in the storage room, or, you know, because someone living for 30 years is totally unrealistic in a series about animatronics possessed by dead kids. Then at 9, Scraptrap. When Scraptrap was introduced in FNAF 6, it confused a lot of people. I mean, his body structure made him look like a totally different animatronic. And this led a lot of people to believe that this was actually a different person. That Scraptrap was Michael and William was Springtrap, or the other way around. That William was Scraptrap but Michael was Springtrap. And that's not the first time this has happened either. But I'll get to that. The final monologue secured Scraptrap as William, since Henry says, "For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell is open to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend." Which is obviously a reference to William, since Michael is not an old friend of Henry. At least I don't think so. And I don't think he should be going to hell. Although it'd be nice to see him there. We could like party. That's my only dance move. It used to be this, but now it's this. In at 8, Survivor. William always comes back. It's one of his defining features. But we predicted William's survival of the FNAF 6 fire thanks to some very clever redditors. Some theorists noticed that the final monologue in FNAF 6 had engulfed the animatronics in flames. Well, all of them aside from one Sir William Afton, Scraptrap, who was instead in front of the flames. This was proven to be true in Fazbear Frights Book 5, Man in Room 1280, where William lays in the hospital in a coma after the fire, with horrific burns all over his body and the Scraptrap suit no longer surrounding him, so the fire must have caught him to cause that severe of damage. Although we had thought that he had escaped mostly unscathed. William only dies after being brought to a Fazbear warehouse when he then explodes violently all over a pastor who wants to grant him his last request. And at 7, Real Life Links. In December of 1993, after Chuck E. Cheese had closed in Aurora, Colorado, Margaret Kohlberg, the manager, is tallying receipts in the back room. While she does that, Bobby Stevens scrubs down the kitchen, and Sylvia Crowell, Ben Grant, and Colleen O'Connor all work on cleaning the main party area. However, there is someone hiding in the bathrooms, 19-year-old Nathan Dunlap. Earlier that year, he had began working as a cook, before getting into an argument over his hours, which resulted in him losing his job. He was looking for revenge. He exited the bathroom and began firing, killing everyone in the building. First Sylvia, then Ben, then Colleen. Then he went into the kitchen where the bullet entered Bobby's jaw, sending him flying to the ground. Then Nathan went to the back, where Margaret opened the safe before being shot twice. Nathan filled her bag with $1,500 cash, arcade tokens, and keychains. Thanks to the security cameras, he was promptly arrested and sentenced to death, thanks to the testimony of Bobby. who actually survived the shot to his jaw. I got this theory from Map Out of Game Theory because it was really interesting, and while it may not be true that the stories are linked, I still think the stories are so close it's impossible not to think about it. In at 6, First Victim. Until the release of Ultimate Custom Night, we thought we knew the order in which William had killed his victims, with the first one being Charlotte, Henry's daughter outside the pizzeria before he started using the golden Bonnie suit, and that she gave life to the other animatronics. I mean, it made complete sense. It explained why the kill was so different and how the give life minigame worked, but now, thanks to Ultimate Custom Night, we know that Chica was the first victim. Susie? Really? Why? Honestly, it makes me mad because the series made so much more sense when the first victim was Charlotte, and it could have helped us get an idea of William's motivation since Charlotte is a more significant kill than Susie. My sister has been watching a lot of Criminal Minds, so I feel like I've picked up on a few things. But unfortunately, that isn't the case anymore. We were proven wrong thanks to Scott and his love for complete and utter chaos. In at 5, Withered Bonnie Wants Your Face. In Withered Bonnie's jump scare in FNAF 2, we can see him reaching towards your screen as if reaching for your face. I mean, he is missing his, and the other animatronics attack if they see an endoskeleton. But if he had an exposed endoskeleton, why would he attack another one, since they're one of his own? Withered Bonnie is also essentially reaching for the Freddy mask that you have on your head that you just flop down, maybe thinking he can use it to prevent others from attacking him, since his freaking face is missing. Actually, now that I think about it, what if the reason they're attacking you is because they can sense the remnant in your body? Maybe in fact you got scooped before becoming the night guard at these pizzerias, and now you look like you should be in a suit because Ennard is inside you, and potentially exposed. I don't know, it seems like a hell of a stretch, but I just wanted to throw that out there. In at 4, Mustard Man. The Mustard Man is the character we play as in the Midnight Motorist minigame, one that we can only see if we take a secret exit around halfway through the playtest, where we get out of the car and try to go into a location called Junior's and then head home to find that our son has broken his window and escaped his room. The most confusing part of FNAF 6 though has to be this fan named Mustard Man. No character until this point had been associated with that color. It was even made explicitly clear in the Freddy files that your character in this minigame isn't purple. There are two prevailing theories about this guy though. One states that this is William Afton before he started killing or something similar, because the minigame and his secret don't have to be at the same time. He could have been driving and the minigame could be like a flashback. The other is that this could in fact be Henry, the father of Charlotte. I mean, there isn't really much to go off of, only that it may be William because of the two sons, one watching TV wearing a gray shirt like Mike from the FNAF 4 minigames, who then goes back home to watch Immortal and the Restless after work in sister location, and the similar color of like the Mustard Man with the I will put you back together text color from FNAF 4. But it may also be Henry's home because there are footprints outside the window which look an awful lot like Glitch Trap's feet, but Glitch Trap is again just sentient code. We also never hear about Henry having more kids than Charlotte. It's weird. Also, I'm glad Charlotte's gone, because it doesn't feel as weird when I say Charlotte was murdered. And at 3, the Cult of Afton. Another theory I saw from MatPat. In Help Wanted's Curse of Dreadbear DLC, you, at the end, are tasked with collecting 4 keys from a corn maze while Hollow Foxy chases you. Well, if you find all 4, a 5th one appears. A glitchy one. If you manage to get it, it unlocks a cellar, which looks like the barn that acts as the hub for the DLC. Well, this time it's torn up and looks like it's been decaying for years. And there's a bunny mask sitting on a table next to an unlit candle and a circle of potentially blood or candle wax. Well, put the mask on and your breathing slows and you relax, then the DLC is complete. When you head back to the prize counter, it's there and you can wear it again. But if you do this while holding Glitch Trap's plush, you start seemingly having a conversation with someone, but you can't hear the other. This leads Matt to believe that there is a cult forming around worshipping Afton, and maybe they are trying to bring him back from hell. And I mean, if Glitch Trap is supposed to be Afton preserved in code, we all know what happens at the end. I've already explained it. Gets out. Shh. Penultimately, in at number 2, Pink Guy. The purple versus pink guy debate is the Mike versus Will Trap debate of the early FNAF days. Back when all we had to worry about was different colors and not like 14 different purple characters. This debate came after FNAF 2's Foxy Go 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 minigame, where some fans believed the guy standing in the corner all smiley while Foxy discovered a group of dead kids was a couple shades lighter than the purple guy we saw killing kids outside the pizzeria. This, combined with the interior and exterior facts of their killings, got them named Purple Guy and Pink Guy. However, this was ultimately put to bed when the strategy guide known as the Freddy Files was released and stated in the Foxy Go 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 minigame, quote, Quote, "Here you'll play as Foxy. Leaving the previous room, you enter a room full of children as party poppers go off. When the last one goes off, you return to your starting position and must make your way to the kids again, and then again. The last time you do, purple guy is visible in the lower left corner of the room. He's smiling. In the next room, the children are dead. This post-death minigame ends with a Foxy jump scare." You notice how it said purple guy is visible? There you go. Finally, in at number 1, Hell. Ah yes, my homeland. The theory that we all believed to be set in stone, until Bunny Call came out. What's this book's deal with ruining so many things we thought we knew about the series? Anyway, the original Ultimate Custom Night theory was that Cassidy was torturing William in hell, or in purgatory on his way to hell, and making him relive all of his crimes because they hated him so much, hence the title of the one you should not have killed. This was evidenced by multiple things, including Henry's speech at the end of FNAF 6, but then the man in room 1280 comes along and instead shows us that it was simply William being tortured in a coma while he was in the hospital. Remarkably similar to how we perceived Crying Child to die in FNAF 4, which is absolutely crazy to say the least, and very poetic in a way. I mean, it's messed up since the dude ends up exploding in a warehouse, but at least the line of "rest your own soul" makes sense now, since torturing William was preventing the spirit from keeping him alive from passing on to their own life. Cause if he was already dead, why would you bother? I personally still think it's Crying Child, not Cassidy, but who knows? Maybe Crying Child's name is Cassidy? I doubt that though. And at 10, Real Pizzeria. Before the release of FNAF 4, Scott Cawthon's website was littered with references to the numbers 8 and 7 in the source code. This caused many fans, and even dear old MatPat, to think that these were references to the year 1987, where the famous frontal lobe bite occurred. However, other fans believed they were coordinates, so after plugging them into Google Maps, which I honestly don't understand how you would do that, I tried it and it didn't work. Like, did you just put all the numbers in, or did you put spaces? Like what? Whatever. After putting them into Google Maps, they found that the location it gave was an actual pizzeria. Obviously, once this got shared, fans of the franchise started harassing the place trying to get answers, and while it might have been all one big coincidence, someone might have caught on before. Kathy Blockus reviewed the pizzeria saying, "The robots kill. I saw a robot fox killing a kid before in there. Run for your life out of there." Alright. Grammar. This was left 3 weeks before FNAF 4 was even announced, which is when all of the 8s and 7s appeared on the website. While this is incriminating, they also left the place a 5-star review, so I'm pretty sure they were just fans of the franchise. But could they be related? In at 9, Mangle was made from Ennard. This really isn't a popular theory. In fact, most people really hate this theory, but the theory suggests that Mangle was made after the events that occurred in the minigames of Sister Location, where Michael Afton barfs up last night's helping of Ennard's spaghetti. This theory seems to point out that Ennard now has plenty of loose and missing parts that could be used to make Mangle. I mean, this is the kind of thing Scott would do. But it was revealed that Baby was kicked out and then she reassembled herself, so I don't really think this theory holds much footing anymore. But it's an interesting theory nonetheless. Even if you hate the theory, you can admit that you kind of believed it would be a thing. If I had seen this theory before the other reveals, I would have believed it. In at 8, Dream Theory. Most of you had heard this one before. Everything we've seen in these games is a dream. Sure, Help Wanted gets kind of meta and kind of puts this theory to bed, but what if the things we are seeing are still a dream? What if it's not the crying child in his home or hospital room waking up every morning? What if it's William Afton dreaming about the insane things he plans on doing, and how well it will work out? Well, to him it will work out well, because he's a lunatic. Time works differently in dreams. You can go a whole month of your life and then wake up and it's only been 6 hours. And sure, you're able to control your dreams, but that's very difficult to do, because once you realize you're dreaming, you basically wake up. So what if he's only considering killing children right now, and this is his mind telling him not to do it, or to do it, because again, he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Or there is the other theory that we are still dreaming through Crying Child, where he's just now further into the dream, trying to justify what he saw so that when he wakes up he isn't terrified. Or he played the games and had nightmares about them, and now he's in the real world maybe? I don't know. And at 7, Midnight Motorist. The Midnight Motorist minigame is probably the biggest confusion point for anyone trying to figure out FNAF 6. Until this point, the game is clear and concise, providing us with explanations for plenty of other things in the series, like the other characters' masks during FNAF 3's Happiest Day minigame. But while the secret of Midnight Motorist has yet to be mentioned, the game itself is very interesting, since in the game files, Midnight Motorist isn't called Midnight Motorist, it's called Later That Night. And considering how we know the guy who killed Charlotte drives a purple car, and it happened at night, this only goes to further that theory. And the Later That Night could just be his drive home. I mean, he is driving fairly frantically, like maybe someone had seen him. And in the secret, we do rush to see if our child is home, so maybe we thought that we saw our kid. So we rush home to hope he didn't see us, but he isn't there. But honestly, My dad drives like this on the highway sometimes. There was at one point, he was driving me home, and there was an airport taxi. He was swerving all over the highway. My dad ended up boxing him in. He was stuck behind a car. He was stuck behind a car in front of him, and then this was us beside him. So he ends up swerving right in front of us. He cuts hard across 4 lanes of traffic to get off to the exit, and my dad has to swerve, and we almost hit the median. It was my closest near-death experience, that I remember at least. Apparently, as a toddler, I tried to run out onto the street. I've known the world was cruel since day one. And at 6, the movie isn't real. We all know about the Five Nights at Freddy's movie supposedly in development by the same studio that made Paranormal Activity, but what if it's not really gonna happen? I can see something like this playing out where instead of making the movie, they say that workers died on set, causing them to halt production, and while it may get some bad press, a series about dead children possessing animatronics having real deaths associated with it would be incredible press nonetheless. Especially when the deaths are actually fake because they only wanted to use the movie as a boost to like the games in the book. We haven't even gotten any word on a potential plot for the better part of a year, at least to my knowledge, and maybe the studio got the rights to the movie since they know how to handle paranormal press, or they have a guy who can do that, something like that. I don't know, I just think that this movie would make a boatload, and since Scott loves rushing out games and books every other month, it's a surprise he hasn't made this one come out yet. Like, come on. And it's damn suspicious if you ask me. Like, what are you doing, Scott? Come on. Halfway through into number 5, Phone Guy. Ah yes, the original theory. The one that started us all on the path to dedicating too much of our time to uncovering the hidden secrets of Five Nights at Freddy's. Oh, just Matt, Pat, and I? In all seriousness, this is the theory that got me to look closer to the Five Nights series. And if Matt Pat hadn't suggested that Phone Guy was the purple guy, the series I don't think would have expanded as much as it did. This theory came from several factors. One was that the Phone Guy openly admits his love for Foxy, which we can see with Purple Guy smiling during the Foxy Go 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 minigame. Phone Guy also admits his distrust of the puppet, who we at the time assumed to be the first victim, and the first animatronic with sentience. So Phone Guy describing it as always thinking certainly would put some suspicion on him. The object in Purple Guy's hand also took the rough shape of a phone, at least for 8-bit standards. All of this evidence led us to the conclusion that Phone Guy was the purple guy, and honestly, I think that's what Scott originally intended, until he decided to expand the series with some books that introduced William Afton as a character into the series. From that point on, just like William, Scott's ideas changed. And at 4, you're the new killer. While yes, I did start playing through FNAF VR on the channel, be sure you go watch, by the way, share and like that video if you want more, because I'm only doing that if it gets enough views. Because, God! Okay. Okay. Oh my. Okay, there they are. However, I already know the end. No matter what you do in the final battle against Glitch Trap, you end up getting stuck in the game while he gets out. And while maybe it's signifying that he is taking over your body or escaping the game, what if instead he is passing the baton to you? I mean, I've already said it. What if he's taking over your body, like physically controlling it while you're in the game? That means that you're the new killer, in essence. But what if being trapped in the game will drive you insane for eternity, until you do the same thing as he did and switch with someone unfortunate enough to play, turning them into code while you escape and plan on tracking down the man who took your life? I mean, it's plausible. Scott has always been known to not shy away from big twists and reveals, like he did in this game. He soft rebooted the series. And if this game was meant to be a soft reboot, wouldn't you becoming the killer be the ultimate switch up, and be one hell of a way to start up a new story arc? I think so. Getting close to the end into number 3, Mic Trap. The Mic Trap theory came on the rise after Sister Location's secret ending, where Michael makes his speech of, "Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you. And I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now, but something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not. I've been living in the shadows. There's only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you." After saying, "I'm going to come find you" again, Springtrap appears at a burnt Fazbear Fright. Why does this cause such a debate? Because some fans assumed that Springtrap appearing meant it was Springtrap who was talking, causing them to think that Mike was in fact the one in the Springtrap suit, hence the name Mic Trap. This, however, was simply to illustrate that Springtrap survived the fire and that he was in fact findable. Since Scott said in a Reddit/Steam post to check out MatPat's conclusion on the debate, and MatPat had concluded that it was Springtrap. Since in FNAF 2's minigame he was able to drive, and if he was Michael, I mean, like, how could we be playing as him in sister location? And a 2, special delivery, indoctrination. In the few cults that I've been a part of, we've always had an indoctrination, something you must complete before being able to join the group and ascend to the next level. But what would a cult surrounding praising a man who sends animatronics after children do? Obviously make you need to survive them. And sure, there are the normal games, but those don't compare to real life. You need something more mobile and accessible. Everyone has a phone, and while it's easy to stay in one place, you can actually move around while using the AR on your phone, making for a more difficult challenge, but also a more telling test of your skill and problem solving abilities. Plus, they gotta know you can kill kids. If you've played FNAF AR, you are now in the cult. Welcome. Finally, in at number 1, ignore help wanted. Now finally, I'm still talking about the Cult of Afton. Maybe they're trying to get him out. Maybe they want to see him freed from his prison and back into the world. But how would they do that? By telling you the exact thing you need to do to let him escape, but by making it seem like it will defeat him. And who in this game gives you the directions to stop Glitch Trap that in fact lets him escape? Tape Girl. Tape Girl also sounds a hell of a lot like the girl who speaks when you wear the bunny mask while holding Glitch Trap. And maybe that's who we're even playing as. But the thing is, we don't know how long she's been a part of this. She might have been the whole time. Hence why she's describing seeing the tester as being covered in oil with a mask laying on the ground instead of blood and his face. We don't know if she's been planning this from the start, so we can't really trust anything she says. This is my own personal theory, and if she says that the company hired Scott to make a joke of things, what if she's only saying that so when William gets out, they'll be looking at the company and not him? Maybe Scott is just fighting for the truth of things. I guess we'll have to wait to find out. Plus, I know that it's not Scott himself in the game, but his name hasn't been revealed, plus it's his photo, so I'm going to keep calling him Scott until such time as it is revealed.